Say Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom to 12 tribes of Israel. Say grace and mercy, blessings unto all of those who are joined in, grafted in from afar and from near. We give praise, honor. We say hallelujah to each and every one of you, to all the kings and queens out there, all of those in Yasharal. We say Shabbat Shalom. Welcome to our Saturday Sabbath class. Pastor Richard Hazlett will be speaking on today. And trying to teach on some things that hopefully will be beneficial. We'll all learn something today, and that he will enlighten us and as we go on this journey. Certainly thankful for the gift of life and the gift of the spirit of wisdom, knowledge, understanding, spirit of counsel, spirit of might, spirit of the fear of Yah. Thankful for that. Asking for his guidance and direction as we build this class on today. This book that we have that we call, thank you, we call the sacred scriptures, the Bible, the Holy Scriptures, the teachings from the Most High, given unto man. And this book that we have, that we study, we learn from, seeking to gain an understanding. That's one thing that he's given us, is the spirit of understanding. But it's something that has to be practiced. It's something that has to be engaging in order for it to bring forth the fruit of understanding. Fruit of understanding is walking in light and walking in truth. I cannot walk in truth without an understanding. It could be an elementary understanding. It could be just the very beginning, the basics of understanding this book. This book was given to a nation that he had chosen. Now, you have to take it up with him on why he chose that nation and those people. That it's not up to us to counsel the Most High. As his creation, we should have our lifelong pursuit of trying to understand him, to be guided by him, directed by him, and when it's all said and done, to live eternally with him. That should be our goal, not to stand in judgment on why did he choose this people, or why did he do it this way, and I probably would have done it different if I was the Most High. And well, we can't enter into that counsel and counsel him. He has done it according to his purpose and his will. He chose a people, and he chose a people over 3,500 years ago. So anytime, as soon as you put your hands on the book and you open up the book, you're dealing with history. You're going back into history. You're going back into a time that many of us are it's abstract to us. We're not connected to the history or the culture of the people that this book was given to. In order for us to understand, therefore, we need to understand the people, the culture, the language, and if we want to get, that's if we want to get into a deep study, a deep dive, if we want to gather, if we want to grow in understanding, because otherwise we're going to be subject to perceptions given by a people, a nation, an oppressor that this book was not given to. And that's the trap that we have fallen into. I just want to start this class off by saying, Saturday Sabbath class is just a little different. We cover more into the history and the study of Yasharal. And you'll hear me say today the names that were given to that nation, that people, and of this book. It's kind of like the restored names. You'll hear me use a lot of the restored names. And I don't say that to offend anyone. I'm not here to offend you or to cause you to lose faith or anything like that. That's not it. But if you allow me to start in Isaiah chapter 11 and verse number 2, and this is what we should be walking in. And he says, "And the Spirit of Yah shall rest upon him, the Spirit of wisdom and understanding, the Spirit of counsel and might, the Spirit of knowledge and of the fear of Yahuwah." So if I have the spirit of understanding, I'm not going to be offended by the restored names that you might hear me use on today. I'm not going to be offended by the teachings of this book if I have the spirit of understanding. We have to grow in knowledge and wisdom. And a part of that growth is the fact that the English language was not even spoken when this book was written. It wasn't even spoken. And so I speak English, and that English language comes from a nation or a people that has taken the book, and according to their culture and their deity, they've translated a Hebrew script or Hebrew scrolls that was specifically given to a Hebrew people. Now, you're going to hear me say some things today, and I got this book that I'm currently reading now. It is the Ancient Near Eastern Thought and the Old Testament. It's by John H. Walton. This is a second edition. So some of the things you might, I might reference and say some things from reading reading just the first part of this book. I just started, so I still got a long ways to go. But there's some things he said in this book that's very, very interesting. If we want to understand the contextual, the linguistics, the culture, and the people that this book was given to, I'm not going to have a comprehensive understanding if I only look at it through the lens and the perspective of a people who it wasn't given to. If that is my conclusion, then I'm not going to have a broad understanding of the contextual, the writings of this book. I'm going to be very limited. Now, one might say, well, can you make it? Can you be saved? And we have to look at certain words and get definition of certain words. When we say saved, what are you saying when you say saved? Some people say, well, can I still be saved? Thank you. Can I still be saved, if I don't fully understand the linguistics of who it was given to, the cultural context, the contextual writings of the book? Can I still be saved? And you can be saved. I was talking about faith the other day, and that faith, and even, the example that I had given out previously, maybe a few classes back, where you had a Canaanite woman who wasn't even of the descendants of the 12 tribes, and she was referred to, and her people referred to as dogs. But he said it was her faith. Her faith aligned with him is what brought the healing to her daughter, and it's the faith that that one will have that will bring to them the salvation that they're looking for, when we understand what the word salvation means and being saved. Because contextually, we use that word saved and salvation in a sense that is not rooted in the book. When you comprehend the ancient writings. And again, I preface this class with, I'm not trying to offend anyone. This is to gain more knowledge and understanding in this book. So I want to, even looking at the people that this book was given to, if I only see things through a lens or a perspective of one nation without even attempting to comprehend or understand the perspective of another nation, especially the nation to whom it was given, then my whole understanding and my whole lifestyle and my whole being is through that perspective. Let me give you an example. Can I give you an example? I'll give you an example. This was 2002. I was in Chicago. I was flying out of Chicago, flying out to Arizona, and it was after September 11, 2001. This was in 2002. And as I was in the terminal waiting to board my plane, and then I got on the plane, and the custom that I have is that when I'm walking through, what do you call that? When you go through the terminal, you're going through the walkway to board the plane and get off the plane. The terminal, yeah, but you've got, you have to go through the gate and go up to the plane. And my custom is I always put my hand on the side of the plane and I say a little prayer. I'm in your hands. Take this plane up, land it. That's just customary for me to do that. And I got on the plane, and as I was looking for my seat and everything, I was looking at the people who had already boarded, and there was a man with a turban sitting on a plane. He was 3/4 of the way back, and I was looking for my seat. And immediately fear gripped my heart. And I go, oh, and I said, oh, Lord. That's one of the first things I said is, oh, Lord. What was all that about? Because I was looking at him through the lens and the perspective of this country, the nation that I'm from, because it was telling me that every Middle Eastern Arab with a turban was a potential hijacker and could bring the plane down. That was I'm just kind of trying to share some things with you. I mean, that's what I experienced. And because that's what I was taught, that was the teaching from my culture. All of us are derivatives or offsprings or the product of our culture. All of us are. None of us are here where we are today without teachers, without linguistics, without culture. All of us. That's how we live our lives. That's how we define our lives. That's how we define us. And so I sat down on that plane and I was praying, and I was fearful. And when you get a little fearful, you get a little nervous, and where's the coffee? You just hurry up, take this plane up, get down. Oh Lord, we just praying. because I was thinking that this man could hijack the plane and bring the plane down. Now, where did I get that from? I mean, people like that travel all the time. Do you know how many flights go up and down where there's no hijacking or anything like that? But because it was a recent hijacking and the information that flooded us, so that when I got on the plane, that was the first thing I thought. So I'm looking at that individual through a certain perspective that was given to me. And that's how we do a lot of times, even today. That was a few years ago, but even today, we look at certain people through the lens and the perspective of our culture. That's just how we do it. It's not to offend anybody. I'm not trying to offend anybody. I'm just trying to explain some things as we get to this book. Another thing I want to bring out as an example in this, I want to go to 2 Kings chapter 18 and verse number 17, and this is a time where you have, some of us know the backdrop here. You have Hezekiah, who was one of the righteous kings of Israel, Yasharal. He was one of the righteous kings, and but it wasn't without trouble. It wasn't without enemies. Anybody that is living righteously and following the Most High, that's following the Most High, you're going to have some conflict. You're going to have some battles. That's just innate. It's going to happen, whether you like it or not. I came over here, into this faith and this belief and this religion. I came over here to be saved and to get rid of all my problems. Well, it don't work like that. It don't work like that. Your faith will be tried. There is a trial of faith. He is going to work you. He is going to prove you. He is going to test you. That's a part of this walk with him. And it's there to make us the type of people and the person that he wants us to be. So in 2 Kings here, 18 and 17, and the king of Assyria sent Tartan, Rabsaris, Rabshakeh from Lachish to King Hezekiah, and a great host against Jerusalem. And they went up and came to Jerusalem, and when they were come up, they came and stood by the conduit of the upper pool, which is a highway of the fuller's field. Now, what I want to point out in this is reading it from our current perspective and lens, the lens that's given to us on how we should read and comprehend this book. Looking at this, the king of Assyria, who did he send? He sent Tartan, he sent Rabsaris, he sent Rabshakeh. Who was that? Does anybody? When I look at this, I'm thinking, well, Tartan, Rabsaris, Rabshakeh must have been some warriors or generals. They were men of war or whatever. I mean, that's how I look at it, because through my lens, how I read this, that's what I see. It's not until you go into the ancient literature and ancient culture do you see a different perspective, because those three names, Tartan, Rabsaris, Rabshakeh, they're not proper names. Those are not proper names. But from my reading of this script, I would think that these are the proper. Somebody might name their son Tartan, Rabshakeh, You know, we look at Rasheka and we think that was his proper name. Those are not the proper name. Actually, when you look at what he sent, this is what these to the king of Assyria, what he sent was that first one, Tartan, is the supreme commander. The supreme commander was called a Tartan. Rasaris was the chief officer. And Rasheka was the field commander. So you had 3 levels of military. It's almost like we would say the president sent the 4-star general, or who's over, he sent the Secretary of Defense. He sent Colin Powell, because he was, at one time, I know he was Secretary of Defense, but before that, he was over the Joint Chiefs of Staffs, I think. He was the head guy over all 4 branches of military. Then I know, he was elevated under President Bush. He was elevated under President Bush to be the Secretary of Defense. But it's like saying, okay, I'm sending the Secretary of Defense, I'm sending my 4-star general, and then I'm sending the field commander general over there as well. So we would see the positions that these men hold and the power that they wield. We see that because of the position. He wouldn't have to say, I'm sending Colonel Colin Powell. He says, I'm sending the Secretary of Defense. I'm sending, the chief of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. I'm sending the top general in the field commander. And that's what the king of Assyria sent to represent the military structure and power that he was wielding against Israel and against King Hezekiah. But it's hard for us to see it in the proper detail if we don't understand the culture and the language in which it was written. Because the only thing we see is in English, we think of proper names. We think of proper names, even like with King Herod. Oh, that's King. His name must have been Herod. No, his name was not Herod. And even the Caesars, these were the commanders, the emperors. But you had these men who had their proper name, but then when they got up to that office, they became the Caesar or the Kaiser. That's pretty much how they pronounced it, was Kaiser. We say Caesar.
I heard on the radio is Colin Powell was the one that was going up against but they got another person.
Yeah.
That's coming up soon.
Yeah, we got a different administration now. So, these are just some basic things that I want to build, just some beginning blocks to build on, so that we can try to look at the scriptures and the writings of this book, not through an Anglican Saxon perspective, but more of a Hebrew perspective and the people that it was given to. And the only way you're going to know that is to study history. You got to study history. You got to be able to get into who were the people and what happened to the people, and how our Messiah came, and then how is all of this going to end up? At the end of the day, how is all of this going to end up? And in order for us to have that enlightenment or that understanding, in order for us to have that enlightenment and understanding, we've got to have an understanding of the people, the language, the culture. In Revelations 12 and 9, it says, and the great dragon was cast out, that old serpent called the devil and Satan, which deceiveth the whole world. He was cast out into the earth, and his angels were cast out with him. Satan, the serpent, the dragon, the devil, is the master or the father of deception. He is quintessential, can I say that? Deceiver. He is the kundala. I don't know. He's just the top. Everything about deception comes from him. Everything about deception comes from him. When he was in heaven at one time. He was in the Shamayim. But everything about him was deceptive. When you look at the 7 I wills, and one of the I wills that he wanted to be was, I will be like the Most High. Didn't he say that? I will be like the Most High. And in fact, that was the last I will that he said. He had said he was going to do all this, I'm going to do all that. But then at the end, he said, I will be like the Most High. And then after he said that, he says, no, you won't. You got to go. We have Jesus who says, I seen Satan fall from heaven like lightning. And that actually happened before you had the man who was created in his image. But this Satan, I feel, and I can be debated on this, but I feel that he is so masterful in his deception, there's not a single person on this earth that has not been deceived or is deceived at this present moment. And I know that's a tall statement. How can you say something like that? I mean, even in the time of our Messiah, let's see how clever our fight with him is not carnal. It's more of a spiritual fight. And a lot of us can't see the spiritual warfare that's going on today. A lot of us can't see it. And if you can't see the spiritual warfare that's going on, then you're deceived. You're deceived. I don't care how many church services you go to. It don't matter what the name of your church is. It doesn't matter what nation you come from. It doesn't. I don't care who your teacher is. There is deception that is blanketing the land, and for a person to, as soon as I say that, if somebody's to stand up and say, I ain't deceived, that person's deceived right there. They've just admitted that they're deceived. People who are holding on to salvation, saying they're saved in salvation without understanding what it is that the script refers to as salvation, that person's deceived. I know it's a tall statement, and it can be debated. But if you don't know what sozo or soteria, if you don't know what that means, well, sozo, soteria, what is he talking about? He's speaking another language? That's Greek. That's Greek. That in some places, in the Greek, when it says sozo, It's, when you translate it to English, it says saved. In other places where it says soteria, when it's translated to English, it means salvation. But not knowing what those words mean is how people use those words, and through their perspective and through their learning and the teaching that they receive from their teacher, they come up with all of these definitions of what saved and salvation is. But if you don't know the root and don't know where it comes from, where it originates, and what it means, then you're deceived. Oh, no, I ain't deceived. Okay, all right, I ain't gonna argue with you. You can go on and say you ain't deceived all you want. But if you can't tell me what sozo and soteria mean, if you can't tell me what that means, then you don't have an understanding of the script and the original script. The purpose of Satan and the devil was to come to deceive the whole world. He wanted to deceive all of the Shamayim. And he was able to convince a third. You're no match for him. I ain't no match for him. Matthew 16. Let's see. Let's start with 21. Matthew 16 and 21. Let's see if you can catch this, because he's masterful and he's very conniving. He is very deceptive. Watch him. Now this comes at a time when Jesus asked him, "Who do men say that I am? Who do you say I am?" And Peter boldly stood up and said, "Thou art the Mashiach, the Ben Elohim." And Jesus said, "Flesh and blood did not give that to you. You did not get that understanding of who I am through your own intellect or your training." And even though Peter was, Kepha was a fisherman. He was a fisherman, so he was not a scholar. He wasn't somebody, he wasn't in the line like Shaul, who sat at the feet of Gamaliel, who was very well studied, spoke what's that? Multilingual. Thank you. Shaul was multilingual. That wasn't Kepha. Kepha was not like that. He was just a basic fisherman, you know. And he said, flesh and blood did not give that to you, but Kepha received that revelation from heaven. He says, my Ab in heaven, he gave you that revelation. So Kepha right there, as he's listening to the Mashiach, and he says, thou art the Mashiach, the Ben Elohim. And then Jesus says, okay, yeah, you didn't get that. Kepha, let me tell you, you did not get that through anything that you learned, nothing that you know, not through your own intellect. That came from our Father in heaven, Ab in heaven. So that, just kind of setting that here, Kepha had received a revelation from heaven, from the Shamayim, by our Ab, by our Father in the Shamayim. He received it. That endowment that Kepha received was of a spiritual nature. Okay, now let's see what happens. From that time forth began Jesus to show unto his disciples how that he must go to Jerusalem and suffer many things of the elders and chief priests and scribes, and be killed and be raised again the third day. Then Peter took him, notice what he does, he took him and began to rebuke him, saying, be it far from thee, Adon, this shall not be unto thee. Now, does that sound like a bad thing? you would think, and his adoration for him, his compassion, his love for him, and like you would love anybody, you would, if you love somebody, you would not want to see them suffer. I love you too much to see you suffer. Be it far from you. No. And in fact, what Kepha was saying, I got your back. He said, be it far from thee, Adon, I got your back. That ain't gonna happen. Not on my watch. I got your six. And Peter was somebody that would arm himself. Now, how do you know he armed himself? Because he had a sword. He went into the night with a sword. His side, that's like us going into the night with a Glock on our hip, our sidearm. That's what Kepha had. They didn't have Glocks. They didn't have, revolvers, Smith & Wessons. They didn't have that. They had a sword. And that's what he took out. If he had a Glock, he would have shot the man. Yeah. So what Kepha was saying is, I got your back. That ain't going to happen to you. But listen to what our Messiah said. But he turned and said unto Kepha, get thee behind me, Satan. Thou art an offense unto me, for thou savorest not the things that be of Elohim, but those things that be of men. Same person, within a matter of a short time period, this man, Kepha, that received a revelation from heaven, Satan had immediately entered into him and made a defense that was against the will of our Ab. And you got people today think they can't be deceived. You got educators and teachers and preachers, and they don't think they can be deceived. That pride and that arrogance has already deceived them. It's already deceived them. All of us are subject to deception. If we're not deceived at this moment, how can you say that? How can you say we're deceived at this moment? Because if you're not walking in light or understanding or revelation, you will be deceived, because that is the power of our adversary. He has the power to deceive. And what we don't stop to realize is that we put people on pedestals in certain positions and hold them up as little gods, and that there's no way I can be deceived from the teaching I'm getting. You better watch out. I'm going to make some folks mad, but I don't care. I'll make some folks mad. Back to Revelations 12 and 9, where he said that he came to deceive the whole world. And I was saying how everything about him is deceptive. You have to check yourself daily. And that's why our prayer life is monumental. Because if you ain't praying, you're deceived. A man, a woman, a boy, or girl that's not praying, and it doesn't have to be. Sometimes we hear certain people pray. Some people tell a good story. Sometimes we hear certain people praying, oh man, and we start comparing ourselves. I can't pray like that. I can't do that. They have a message, they preaching, they got a good story, mama this, and they got all kind of stories and flowery vocabularies, and we think, oh my God, if I could pray like that. And all you got to do is talk to him. You get into your closet and you talk to him the way you talk to him. You don't make no comparison. I can't compare myself to nobody else. I have the way that I approach him and talk to him. But if you're not praying and don't have that prayer life, you're deceived, because if Satan is bold enough to take over Kepha or Peter, who are you? Who are you? That's why those men of Sceva, that man of Sceva, them devils came out and says, Jesus we know, Shaul we know, but who are you? Who are you? We gonna take over. They entered that man. He immediately ripped all his clothes off. He was butt naked and ran out of there. So for anybody to think that they can't be deceived is already deceived. They're already deceived. But what keeps us or helps us on this journey is we have to stay in communication with him to where we're after his desire and his will, not our own. Because if you are in your flesh to where you're after your own will, that's what he works on. Did y'all just hear what I said about Peter, about Kepha? Did y'all just hear that? He was in his flesh. He said, no, that ain't going to happen to you. I got your back. No. He says, if you go down, I'm going down. Even he told Jesus, he said, how did he say that? I'm trying to think of how he worded that. Because he says, I will not deny thee. And he compared it to something. Anyway, but he said, I will not deny thee. Though all men forsake you, I think that's what he said. Something to that effect. Though all men forsake you, I will not deny thee. So anybody that's trusting in their own flesh and gets into the flesh, and we have those tendencies to ride the flesh and to get into our flesh and our own fleshly will. I'm going to do this my way. Just like Kepha. And that's when Satan steps in and takes over your life. He takes over you because you're in your flesh. You're in your flesh. That's why he said, as many of us that are led by the Ruach, we are the what? Ben Elohim. If you're led by the Ruach is the spirit, the ghost, the spirit. If you're led by the Ruach, then are you the sons or the Ben Elohim. You can't be a Ben Elohim if you're led by your flesh and not the Ruach. So if I'm going to be led by the Ruach, in Galatians 4 and verse number 6, and because ye are Bens, Elohim have sent forth the Ruach of his Ben into your hearts, crying, Ab, Ab, or Abba, Father. When you see Abba is the first and the second letter of the Hebrew alphabet. You got Abba, like we have A, B. It's almost like crying out, A-B, A-B. But in the Hebrew, it's Ab, because you have the first letter and the second letter. And then looking at that first letter was the ox, or in the pictograph Hebrew, it's the ox head, which represents the strength of the ox. He is the head. There's nothing above the strength of the ox. He uses pictograph and things that we can comprehend to bring in, to help our understanding of who he is. Unless he's manifested to us, we have no idea. We cannot relate to him except through manifestations. If he's not manifesting himself to us, then we don't know him at all. We're totally lost unless there's manifestation. His power. How is his power, when we talk about the ox head, the first letter, the ah, how does he manifest his power? Huh? His strong arm? Okay. Let's go all the way back to the beginning. Because now we're finite. We have a beginning, but he doesn't. But how does he or did he manifest his power? He gave us. But what did he do? All the way back to the beginning, there's two witnesses. Heaven and earth, the creation of the Shamayim and the Arats is a witness to his power. That's a witness to his power. And he spoke it. Somebody said the word. He spoke it. The power of him. So when you look at the ox and the strength and the power, that's the first thing. You have to go all the way back to the beginning. That is the first. And we have two witnesses of his power. And that's the heaven, the Shamayim, and the Arats, the earth. That's the witness of his power. Now, he always does things in two or three witnesses. We have two witnesses to his covenant with Jacob. What are the two witnesses to his covenant with Jacob? Two witnesses that he's not going to forsake his covenant with Jacob. He gave us two witnesses. He made a covenant with Jacob, but he gave us two witnesses, and as long as those two witnesses are there, he is not going to forsake his covenant with Jacob. The sun and the moon, the great light and the lesser light are two witnesses that he's not going to forsake his covenant with Jacob. So every time we see the sun in the sky and during the day, and we see the moon, that's what they call it. We say moon because we get it from our the Anglican language and linguistic. They call it the moon, and so and they call it the sun, sun, and so that's what we speak because we speak that language. That's not what the Hebrews had called it, who this book was written to. But anyway, Ab, you have Ab, A, B. Now, Ba, you got Ah, and then you got Ba. That Ba represents the house. It is the house or the dwelling place. You have the strength of the house. The strength of the house is our Father, our Ab. He's the strength of the house. And so the Ruach in us cries out. So if your spirit, your Ruach is not crying out, Ab, well then you don't have the Ruach. Quit fooling yourself. You could have a spirit, but the Ruach cries. I don't know. I guess we're reading different books. That's all right. Y'all go ahead and read your book. But according to there's a lot of things this is what man has a habit of doing, is injecting. They like to assert and inject a lot of things into the script without taking the whole, all of the script and the contextual design of it all in one. We have a habit of cherry picking. I'm just going to use this here without building on precepts and line upon line and here a little, there a little, and get the whole contextual design of it. We'll take little bits and pieces here and there, and we use that. It's cherry picking. Understanding the contextual of this book, his sons cry out to him. And it's not so much the sons as it is the Ruach that's in them. It's the Ruach that's in you. So if my Ruach and this book lines up, then How could I not call on Daddy? According to some people who would tell you you don't have a father. I wouldn't believe that if I was y'all. That remember the master deceiver. His intent is to deceive not a few people, but to deceive the whole world. I want to show you something else in Revelation chapter 12. Revelation chapter 12, and I think it's verse number 12. Notice what he says here. Therefore rejoice, Shamaim, and ye that dwell in them. No wonder there's so much joy in the Shamaim. Why is there so much joy in the Shamaim? Huh? It's right here. Let's just keep reading. Why is there so much joy in the Shamaim? He ain't there no more. He's gone. Satan is gone out of the heavens and they're rejoicing. He says, Shamaims and ye that dwell in them. That's why all of the angels up in heaven, all the messengers in heaven and all the Shamaim, they're so happy because Satan's gone. There ain't no Satan up in the Shamaim. They so happy. They having a good, they're so glad. But listen, woe to who? The inhabitants of the earth and of the sea. Don't minimize the sea or disregard it totally, because it even talks about in the prophets and even in Job about what lies in the sea and the creatures of the sea. It's interesting now. I find it interesting that we got all of this. Now they're talking about the military. United States government and military is finally coming out that they've seen extraterrestrials and they've had sightings of all this stuff in the space and all this stuff flying around and is coming down, and it's just interesting that has a storyline in our culture now, because it was never nothing like that before, but now you're starting to hear more of that language, and the fact that we're on Mars, which I find very comical. That's just me. But we're on Mars, and they said we can put oxygen on Mars. You know why they said we could put oxygen on Mars? Because all these little tricklets and everything that they got up there, you can't operate them without oxygen. You can't propel without oxygen. All these little stuff that they're doing, you need oxygen to do that. So now they're saying, we could put oxygen on Mars, because people are starting to wise up. Well, if you could put oxygen on Mars, how come you can't put oxygen on the moon? Why travel that great distance so far out there, and you can't do something on the moon that you see every day? You see it up there in the sky all the time. And this so-called web that we have around the earth, like they want us to believe, there's a web around the earth. What's that web around the earth? Well, we got all of these satellites. There's thousands upon thousands of satellites orbiting the earth. They're all around the earth and all this, and they do all this triangulation and did I say that right? Triangulation and the triangulation that they're talking about is just how the devil communicates with all of his fallen angels that have come to earth. He knows how to. When the devil said, "I will be like the Most High," the Most High is omnipresent. The devil is not omnipresent. But what he does is, with all of the third of the host that fell out with him, and that third of that host and Satan, he can triangulate and find out what everybody else is doing. We're just getting an insight into what he has been doing We're starting to get the insight now with triangulation and everything like that he's been doing all the while, because he's trying to be like the Most High. He's not omnipresent, but he wants to be like the Most High. And so he has this web around the earth. We call it satellites all over the place, all this triangulation. The satellite communicate as the earth spins. It goes from one satellite, transfers to another satellite, beams it down to earth and all that. What they're trying to explain to you is how SA-10 works. He does have a web. He has a web around the earth, and it's of his being. But we're starting to grow in that knowledge. He's teaching. The devil is teaching a lot of people what he has been doing for a long time. And so you're going to see even more advancement now. And a lot of it comes from, if not all of it, it comes from the devil. What he's trying to do to triangulate the earth with all his devils. That's how he communicates. He's not here in Davenport, but he's got all these devils that communicates with this other devil and these other devils, and it gets back to him, and he knows what's going on here in Davenport, even though he's not here. Huh? Gangs. But that's what we use now. What we use with these cell phones and everything like that, that's just how SA-10 does it. And so we're starting to grow in this night. Oh, this is how he does it, because he's not omnipresent. So we can communicate with one another, and through mediums like Facebook and some of these other mediums, you can communicate with people around the world and find out what's going on around the world. You ain't over there in Israel, but you can find out what's going on in real time. Real time. Because that's how our adversary. But notice what he says here of the earth and the sea. And I would say this. I'm gonna throw this out there. Knock down all those communication towers. Take them all down. I mean, cut them up, take them all down. And let's see how much of a cell phone communication you'll have. Knock down all the towers. Keep the satellites up there now. All those make-believe satellites, keep them up there. But knock down those towers. I'll give you the satellites. Just knock down the towers and see what you have. Because the only way that you can triangulate is through those towers. If they didn't have their cell phone. Mm-hmm. That's it. Cut those cables. Do you know that you would be at war if you cut those cables down in the sea? If China or Russia or Iran or any other nation got down in the sea and cut our cables, oh, you're talking about war. In fact, they try to tap into those cables, and why do they try to tap into those cables? Anybody know why they try to tap into those cables? Those cables that are buried in the sea, that goes down in the sea. We have these cables that go all the way over to all these different countries and everything. You know what when they try to tap into those cables, they're trying to get intelligence. They're trying to get communication. I want to hear what you guys are saying. I can tap into those cables. So they got this SA-10's got the world hoodwinked. The world is hoodwinked. So notice what he says here. So he says, woe to the inhabitants of the earth and of the sea, for the devil is come down unto you. So he was kicked out of the Shamaim. When he got kicked out of the Shamaim rejoiced. Hey, man, it's beautiful. Hey, whoo, man, it's beautiful now. This is good times now. SA-10 is gone. But he says, woe unto the inhabitants of the earth and the sea, for the devil is come down unto you having great wrath. Why is he so full of wrath? Well, he couldn't get his way up in the Shamaim. He got demoted. You're demoted. You ain't in the Shama anymore. You demoted. And it happened so quick. Jesus said it happened like lightning. It was just like lightning. You know how quick lightning strikes. Boom, he got kicked out. But he has a lot of wrath. Why? Because he knoweth that he hath but a short time. He knows his time is short. He knows he has a short time, and he knows that there's a place that's prepared for him. A place that's prepared for him, and he knows that. So what he's trying to do in his short bit of time, he's got so much wrath, he intends to deceive you. And if you're not walking in the light, and that's why he has to give us, let's go back to Isaiah chapter 11 and verse number 2. That's why he has to give us. He says, the Spirit of Yah shall rest upon him, the Spirit of wisdom and understanding, the Spirit of counsel and might, the Spirit of knowledge and of the fear of Yah. It's going to rest upon him. That Spirit is going to rest upon him. Now you know who he's talking about, right? He's talking about our Messiah. He's talking about the Mashiach, our Messiah. That's who he's talking about. If you go to verse number 1, and there shall come forth a rod out of the stem of Jesse, and a branch shall grow out of his roots. But look at what our Messiah has. This is what he has. That's why it's so important to walk in that Spirit. If you're not, and that's why he makes the declaration, my bens or my sons are those who walk in the Ruach. Those who are led by the Ruach. Those are my bens or my sons and my daughters. If you're not walking in the Ruach or in the Spirit, if you're not walking in that Spirit, then you're not one of his sons, because you're going to be controlled. And what does he work through? He works through your flesh. That's what he did with Kepha, right? We've seen that. We've seen that example. Kepha's intention, like I asked before, was that a bad thing? When he said he had his back? That really wasn't a bad thing. But the reason why Satan was able to use it was because it was contrary to the will of our Father. So don't you want to know the will of the Father? I've got to know the will of the Father. I want to walk in that Spirit and know the will of my Father, because if I don't know the will of my Father, it's easy to fall prey to the flesh. And once you fall prey to the flesh, then you'll be manipulated by Satan. That's why he says everybody that's walking in the flesh, you can't what? Please them. If you're walking in the flesh, remember he says that in Romans chapter 8. He says if you walk in the flesh, what? You cannot please me. You can't. Because walking in your flesh makes you vulnerable to Satan and to his program. There's a lot of times, even in the assembly, the congregation, there's time where our leaders, we see certain people going through certain things, whether it's affliction of the flesh or complex problems and situations, and we want to come in and start to rebuke it. Ooh, I don't know. Maybe somebody will hear it, maybe they won't. And all of a sudden, we start rebuking something that is our Father's will. But since we don't know his will, like Kepha, he took it upon his own personal. No, I'm not going to let that happen to you. There's some things that our brothers and sisters, sons and daughters, are going through, and that's according to his will. But because we don't know his will, then we interject, and we might even start rebuking. Oh. And we don't know that you got to go through that, because we don't want to see nobody suffer. I don't want to suffer. I don't want to suffer. But isn't that one of the fruits? Long suffering is a fruit. I don't want to suffer. No. And there might be something happening in my life, and I start rebuking it and not knowing. So that's why I have to walk in the Spirit, walk in the Ruach, so I know if I'm up against Satan or not. Because if you're walking in your flesh, you're not going to know it. You're not going to know it. And there's a lot of things that now if we rebuke it in his name, then what happens? It's gone. But some things are according to his will. So there's a lot of things that we're rebuking and it's not according to his will, and it yet remains. Because if it's done correctly in his name, Satan has to flee. He has to flee. If it's done in his name and it's according to his will, that's why you see certain things happen immediately right now, and there's certain things that, man, we've been rebuking this devil for, I lived, now I'm dead, and we still rebuking that devil. How do you, that could be according to his will. Yes. No, not so much judgment. No, I'm not dealing with judgment. For anybody to say that the curses of Deuteronomy 28, I'm going to rebuke that in the name of Jesus. Now, how far do you think you're going to get? You ain't getting nowhere. Why? Because that's according to his will. You mean he willed for them people to suffer like that? Mm-hmm. It was according to his will. You mean it was his will that they were sold into slavery? That was according to his will. So you can rebuke it all you want. It ain't going to change nothing because you can't rebuke his will.
Don't you stand on the line if you're trying to rebuke something and it's according to his will? Would you be considered anti-Christ because you are rebuking something against his will? He wants you to go through that and you keep rebuking it?
Well, we have it right here. Jesus began to tell his disciples what he was going to do. I have to go to Jerusalem. I have to suffer many things. This is what's going to happen to me. There was a time, even with Shaul, where one of those prophets said, this is what's going to happen to you when you go down to Jerusalem, right? And he bound himself with bands and everything. And Shaul says, why y'all crying? I'm willing to go through that. If that's what I have to go through, that's what I have to go through. You guys are trying to prevent me from going through what I have to go through. We're so self-reflected and not walking in the Ruach that when something comes upon us, instead of seeking his will and give me the strength to go through this, and I want to be standing on the other side when I get through this, instead we want to take it away. Take it away right now. We got a lot of examples. Shaul prayed how many times to have that thorn in the flesh removed? He said 3 times. The Most High told him, I'm not removing it. He said, I'm not going to remove it. So then what did Shaul say? His grace was sufficient. So he had to go to the grave with it. Our problem is when we're not walking in the Ruach, we can't determine what's his will and what's not his will. Yeah, because we're in our flesh. That's what happened right here. With Peter, I mean, it wasn't really a bad thing. He didn't want the Mashiach to go through that. No, that's not going to happen to you. And he says, what did he tell him? He said, get behind me, Satan. You're an offense to me, yes. In the Garden of Gethsemane? Uh-huh. In the Garden of Gethsemane, his fleshly will. He knew what he had to go through, but he says, if possible. He knew what his end was because he even told Pilate. He said, for this end was I born. I know what I came to do. He said the whole book, I come in the volume of the book. So I knew what my end's going to be. But he said, if possible, Father. I mean, if it's possible, if there's any way out of this. But then he said, nevertheless, not my will, but thine be done. So that shows his human side of him. Because he knew in the Garden of Gethsemane, he knew what he was going to go through. He knew the beatings he was going to take. Why? Because it was prophesied. It was, the prophet said his visage would be marred more than any man. That was prophesied. So he knew in order for my visage or my appearance to be marred more than any man, and I mean, when you see people go into battles, I mean, it's a little different today, but when they had warriors and stuff, and you would see people who did possibly survive and how mutilate their faces look, how bruised, how swollen. And he knew what he had to go through. So he was saying, Daddy, if there's any way possible, I mean, is there anything in you that will prevent this from happening to me? But if not, then I'm willing to go through. So yeah, he had his human experience. And a lot of us, we don't want to, if we're honest, we don't like to suffer and we don't like pain. We don't like pain in our body and we don't like to suffer. People will lose out because they don't want to suffer. And they'll fall into the flesh. And even I mean, there's some things that we do maybe in ignorance or before our birth of water and spirit. There's some things that we do. And then all of a sudden, we want that law of sowing and reaping to be lifted. And not necessarily so. Because there's some things that you've done. Every seed that we plant, when that seed is planted, it's going to bring forth a harvest. Now, we want salvation to come in and cut that harvest off. Because we don't want to reap nothing bad. We don't want to sow. We don't want to reap nothing bad. I know what I sowed, but I don't want to reap nothing bad. No. He's a forgiving Elohim. The Most High is forgiving. He can forgive you of that transgression, but the seed has already been sown. Now, do you want him to bring judgment at that time? Because we have an example with King Daud. When he seen Bathsheba and went in unto her and she was impregnated, now the seed was sown. And you hear the prayer of Daud and how Daud was willing to reap the harvest from that seed being sown. Because he knew the problem. In fact, the problems never did leave his house. But what came instead of the reaping, what came before that? Which was the death of the child, which was what came before that reaping of that harvest? Judgment. Judgment came. Because the Most High took the baby. And then once he took the baby, then David got up and they said, wait a minute, what's wrong with you? The baby just died. He said, that's judgment. That's it. You know, David was willing to reap what he sowed, but judgment came before that reaping process. But yet and still, in that judgment, he said that the sword will never depart from his house, and he was going to have trouble with his families for the rest of his days. Now, did that come out? It did. That was true. That judgment was true. So the Most High is not somebody that you want to play with, like a lot of people play with him. You don't want to play with the Most High. And when he's already prophesied, see, there's some things that he's already prophesied on. For me to try to pray over that, I'm not walking in the Spirit. I'm not walking in the Ruach if I'm trying to pray over some of the things that's prophesied that's going to happen. And many of us, almost all of us, me included, having a clarity of the prophets and the prophecy that's yet to come is absent from most of us. It's just absent. Okay. So did we see this, how Peter was into his flesh and what happened? Being in your flesh, that's when Satan could take over and actually cause you to go against the will of the Most High. But Jesus saved Peter. He saved him because he cut off that man's ear. But the compassion of Christ put it back on. He says, put the sword up. He knew why he came. He had to go through that, and he had to die. I was in where was I? Revelations 12 and 12, because he knows he has a short time. He knows that his time is short here on the earth. So everybody here on the earth needs to understand that Satan has a lot of wrath and nobody's off base. No teacher, no preacher. We have to be careful when we put people in certain positions and we think they're untouchable. Kepha was not untouchable. Christ wasn't. The Messiah was not untouchable. He went after him. So if he went after our Mashiach, you don't think he's going to come after you? And we don't see Satan. Like I said, the third of the heavenly host is down here on earth, covering the earth, hovering over the earth, and they communicate with one another. We don't even see Satan. If he was to walk in here right now, he'd probably blow all of us away. Our only protection would be in Christ. That's our only protection. I would have to say, Jesus rebuke you. I rebuke in the name of Jesus and go on about my business. I don't want to deal with you. I don't even want to deal with your imps. I don't want to deal with devils. I see devils. I don't want to see them. Y'all go somewhere else. I don't want to deal with it. I don't want to deal with it. You ain't got no power. I want to walk in the light. As long as I can walk in the light and be led by the Ruach, that's the only way we know anybody is his son or his daughters, is if you're led by the Ruach. If you're not led by the Ruach, where's that verse at? Is that in Romans? Isn't that Romans? Is it the 8th chapter? Where he says, as many as are, yeah. As many as are led by the spirits. Is that 8:14? Okay. For as many as are led by the Ruach of Elohim, they are the Bens Elohim. So if you're not led by the Ruach, then you're not a Ben. And there's a difference between the Ruach and Satan. Because Satan is not omnipresent, and he has to have all his imps to communicate. The Ruach is omnipresent, invisible spirit that does not need. And then verse 15, like we read in Galatians, for ye have not received the spirit of bondage again to fear, but ye have received the Ruach of adoption, whereby we cry, Ab, Ab, or Abba, Father. So it's the Ruach does that crying out. Maybe you're praying and the Ruach isn't. Maybe you're praying, but you're not being led by the Spirit. And that could be too. But you definitely have to have that relationship with him to where you're being led by the Ruach. So when he knows that his time is short, and when the dragon saw that he was cast unto the earth, he persecuted the woman which brought forth the man, which is the woman is the nation where he came from. And we know he came from Yasharal. Out of all the nations on the earth, there's only one nation that produced the Messiah. One nation produced the Messiah. And that's the woman that it's speaking of here in Revelations chapter 12. And to the woman were given 2 wings of a great eagle, that she might fly into the wilderness, into her place. Now, how is it that those who are walking in the Ruach, who are the Bens Elohim, how is it they don't see this? How is it they don't see it? How can the Spirit that you receive not reveal this unto you? How is that? Or is it, are we all products of what we're being taught? Because you have people who have lived and perished and died that has not seen this. Now, how is that? How can you be born of the Spirit and walk in the Ruach and not see this? All of us are products of our teaching. And that's why he said in 1 John, you don't need a man. Now, get an understanding. You don't need a man to teach you, but who does the teaching? The Ruach, or in 1 John, he calls it what? The anointing does the teaching. So unless the teacher, if the teacher doesn't have that anointing or that Ruach, they're not going to be able to teach you the things of the scripture that the Spirit will plainly bring out if you're walking in the Spirit. Now, so then what happens? Because a lot of times we're taught through tradition and we're taught through our teachers, but we're not taught by the anointing or the Ruach. There's a difference in traditional teaching and anointed teaching. There is a difference. Yeah. Right. That's the tradition. It just okay, we've always taught this. This is one thing we have to be careful of. This is one thing we have to be careful of. This is our tradition. This is our organizational stance and our organizational position. And if you don't follow in that organizational line and tradition, then you're not a part of us. That you have to be careful of. That, because then that becomes indoctrination, not by the Ruach, but indoctrination by the organization. And when you have indoctrination by the organization, that's not new. That type of understanding predated Christ. Because when you study the pontiffs, that was a collegium or college of priests which predated Christ. It was a college of priests that predated Christ. And they had the authority to write religious law. I'm talking about predated Christ. And they wrote religious law And you had to be in that order. This is our organizational order. And so in order to be in this organizational order, you're going to be obedient and come under servitude to our organizational order, which the pontiffs write the law, the religious law. So we have to be careful when, okay, this is our organizational decree. Uh-oh. You got to be careful. Because most of those organizational decrees come from Rome and not Jerusalem. Because what came from Jerusalem came through the Mashiach to his hand-picked men. And then one born out of due season, which was Shaul. And they taught what was given to them, which was the commandments given to them by who? The Mashiach. And so it was those commandments. So anybody that teaches against the commandments and they have a religious order, that the roots of that comes from the pontiffs. I hope somebody hears me. I don't know. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. I don't know. You'll get it later. It'll come later. You'll get it. Yeah. But this is so true. This is so true. Remind me to come back to 12, but this is so true in Matthew 7 and 21. Or no, 13. Let's go to 7 and 13 and then 14. Matthew 7, 13 and 14. This is so true. Enter ye in at the strait gate, for wide is the gate and broad is the way that leadeth to destruction, and many there be which go in thereat. First and foremost, he's not speaking secularly, if you allow me to use that word. First and foremost, he's not speaking secularly. And he's not speaking to other nations. He's speaking to those who were in Judea that could hear his voice. He's speaking to them, and he's saying that now, wide is the gate, broad is the way. Anything that's outside of me is what's going to lead to destruction. Verse 14, because straight is the gate and narrow is the way that leadeth unto life, and few there be that find it. In Yasharal. That's in Israel. So he's not speaking about the whole world. He's speaking within Israel. There's only going to be a few that's going to find it. Of my own people. My own people. He's not talking about the Romans. He knew, our Messiah knew of the pontifice. You can't tell me he was in Judea at that time, and Judea was under what? What, were they a free kingdom at that time? No. They were subject to the Roman Empire. At the time of his birth, they already had a Caesar. He was born after Julius Caesar. The Caesars ruled in Judea. The Roman Empire, that fourth beast, was ruling at the time of his birth. The pontifice was 200 some years before his birth. If you think that he didn't know about that, then you're not walking in understanding. You're not walking in understanding. He knew exactly what Rome had on the plate. He knew exactly. He says, when I'm gone, he said, the kingdom is going to suffer violence. And he said, the violent is going to what? They're going to take it by force. They're going to take it by force. You guys don't know what you're up against. He says only a few are going to be able to find this eternal life. Then in Joel chapter 2, and verse number 32. And it shall come to pass, whosoever shall call on the name of Yahuwah shall be delivered. Now, what is he talking about? Why is he saying that? That doesn't say Yahuwah, that doesn't say Yah, that says Lord. In the English translation, that's what it says. In the original text in which it was written, it says it's 4 letters, which the Greeks call the tetragrammaton, which means 4 letters. It's the Yod, He, U, He. Yod, A, U, He. In the Hebrew language, they didn't have no W. Like we have the W. If you see the letter, I wish I could write. But if you see the W, when we say W, we know what we're looking at, right? W. But listen to what you're saying. What you're saying is a double U or a ooh sound. The ooh sound is the W that they try to put in because there was no W in the Hebrew language. So when it's translated to a W, what it's saying is it makes the ooh sound. It's a double U. It's a double U. Just like when you say pool, like a swimming pool, it's 2 O's, you got the double U sound. So you got the Yod, He, U, He. Yod, A, U, He. And so his name was Yod, A, U, He. Yod, A, U, He was his name. And he said, those who call on Yod, A, U, He shall be delivered. For in Mount Zion and in Jerusalem, where is deliverance? Mount Zion and Jerusalem shall be deliverance, as Yah hath said. Listen, and in the remnant whom Yahuwah shall call. He's not calling everybody. Yah is not calling everybody. That's prophecy. Who else said this prophecy? Who quoted this prophecy? Peter. Peter did. And when did Peter quote this prophecy? On the day of Pentecost. On the day of Pentecost, he quoted this, and we got Pentecost coming up. Shavuot. The Feast of Shavuot is coming up. We'll be feasting here at 6 p.m. on 23rd, which be the first. It's the first day or the 50th day. You count 7 Sabbaths. I think this is the 4th Sabbath. I think this is the 4th Sabbath because you had unleavened bread up through, on the Greco-Roman calendar, April 3rd. So you start counting 7 Sabbaths after that. So you got the 10th, 17th, 24th. This is the 4th Sabbath. And then you've got the 5th, the 6th, the 7th Sabbath, and then the first day after that 7th Sabbath, because you count 7 Sabbaths, and then you have that first day after that 7th Sabbath, which is the Feast of Shavuot, and we'll be here feasting at that time. And it's supposed to be a joyous occasion. It's in Nehemiah, the 8th chapter, and the 10th verse, he told them to stop crying because they were so sorrowful because what was read on Pentecost was the law. They got up and they read the law. And when they heard the law, people started crying, oh my God, we've gotten so far. We're not doing nothing that the law said. And they was crying and everything. And Nehemiah says, stop it, dry up your tears. He says, this is a feast. This is a time to rejoice. He says, the joy of Yah is your strength. So this is a feast of rejoicing. We're supposed to have a rejoicing spirit and a joyous occasion on that 50th day after the Feast of Unleavened Bread. And so Peter got up and spoke on that day, and he quoted Joel the prophet. He quoted Joel the prophet. Now, Peter did not speak English, so he did not use the instruments or devices. And a few Sabbaths ago, we talked, Sister Tamika had a Bible that in the preface, it told you the instruments and the devices that they use. You'll find it in the NIV, some early versions of the some early versions of the Darby, NIV, I think it's the ESB, some of those early versions. You'll see it in there where they actually, and I've got a Bible upstairs, it's the Oxford Bible, and it has 80 books in it. It came from England. It was an Oxford Bible. It has 80 books in it. But in that preference, it tells you that they use a device or an instrument, and they substitute Lord for his name. It's right there. It's right there. You don't have to believe me. Don't believe me, and don't get mad at me. Do your own research and look it up, because it's right there. I didn't make none of this up. Everything that I've said and I've been teaching, I don't make none of it up. And I know people don't agree. A lot of people don't agree. I don't agree with you. But that's fine, because I don't have a heaven or a hell. I don't have none of that. You're going to find that in this book. And so what Joel said, or what Peter said, he quoted right here from Joel. And so he says, for in Mount Zion and in Jerusalem shall be deliverance, as Yah have said, and in the remnant whom Yahuwah shall call. So there's only a few that's going to find it, because he's not calling everybody. He's not calling everybody. Get that through your head now. He's not calling everybody. He says, I'm only going to call a remnant. That's all I'm calling. So if some people don't get it, I don't get it, I don't believe it, I don't believe nothing he said, that's fine. That's fine. He's not calling you. That's fine. I mean, you're going to have to face him. You're going to have to face him one day. So what he gave them his name, and he meant for them to know him through his name. Exodus, let's go to Exodus 6 and verse number 3. Exodus 6 and 3. Now, who do we give credit for of writing Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy? Moses. Moshe is the author of Genesis. He wrote, he wrote that book. The Most High gave it to him, and he wrote that. And there's probably other tablets that he had that he, fragmented, brought that in. But he wrote Genesis. With that understanding, who did Moshe knew who he was? Is that the right question? Okay, let me reframe that. let me reframe that question. When we read in Genesis, and I know they put in the instrument or the device, Lord, and you can go back into Genesis and you can see the device used, Lord. But who's writing Genesis? Bereshit. Who's writing it? It was Moshe's writing it, right? So how did he appear unto Moshe? So I just want to set that there, because listen to what he says here in Exodus 6 and 3. And I appeared unto Abraham. Any questions out there? Anybody got any questions? Do you have a question? Okay. And I appeared unto Abraham, unto Yishak, and unto Jacob by the name of Al Shaddai, or we say El Shaddai, Al Shaddai, because God actually is Elohim. Elohim is more of the Masoretic text rendering of it, The ancient Hebrew calls him Elohim. The Masoretic text calls him Elohim. So, some people say Elohim, some people say Elohim. Elohim came before Elohim because Elohim comes from the Masoretic text. Well, where does the Masoretic text come from? Masoretic text doesn't come until after you had actually the 3rd or 4th century, somewhere around there, is you had the Masoretic text, where you had people who were, I'm just going to go ahead and say I won't do a lot of study on it, but they were not of the descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, but they actually took the writings of that and they wrote it in the modern day Hebrew language at that time, and they put vowel points on it, because in the original writings there is no vowel points. There is no vowel points. Even in the Aramaic Hebrew that was spoken in the time of our Messiah, and they put no vowel points on it. The vowel points did not come until the Masoretic text. They put the vowel points in there, and they put the vowel points in there so that it would be easier for them to pronounce it in their pronunciation. That's why they did it. So you have the pronunciation of the Masoretic text, then you can go back to the ancient Hebrew and get the pronunciation. I hope everybody's following with that. Okay, so and I appeared unto Abraham, unto Yishak and Jacob by the name Elohim Shaddai or El Shaddai. A lot of people say, well, I know El Shaddai. I know that better than Elohim Shaddai. Elohim Shaddai is the same as El Shaddai, because in the Masoretic text, they pronounce it El Shaddai, but in the ancient Hebrew, they pronounce it Elohim Shaddai. Elohim Shaddai. And so he said, that's how I was known unto them, by Elohim Shaddai, but by my name, Yahuwah, was I not known to them. Now, what is he saying here? Well, from the time of Adam all the way up to Jacob or Jacob, from the time of Adam to the flood, which was Noah, and from Noah to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob, which was all, the family, because they went down into Egypt as a family. They came out of a nation, but going down into Egypt as a family, it wasn't until he changed his name from Jacob to Yasharal where he introduces himself in a different fashion. Now, why is that relevant? And what's the relevancy there? Because there was other Els, or other gods, G-O-Ds, for those who don't know what Els, there were other Els, other gods, other G-O-Ds in that day. Even when he told them in Joshua, he says, I don't want you to serve them other G-O-Ds that was on the other side of the flood. Every nation, this is the Ancient Near Eastern Thought and the Old Testament by John H. Walton, which is a good book, but every nation had their God, and they had certain names that they called their Els, that they called their Els. But for the Hebrews, what they told the whole world, because they had to be a witness unto him, they said, our El is Elohim. He's supreme to all gods, all of them. He's a supreme being. And so he was known unto Abraham, Yishak, and Jacob as all Elohim Shaddai, or El Shaddai. That's how he was known unto him. And what that meant was he had all power. I got all power. And when he told Abraham, when he says, I am that I am, Ahia, Ashir, Ahia, what he's saying is the Almighty, or I am, will be I am, or whatever I want to be. I'm going to be whatever I want to be. I was known unto them as El Shaddai. I had all power over all the other gods. But when he introduces himself to Moses, he says, I'm going to be whatever I want to be. I will be, I am. I'm going to be that. So whatever I am, that's who I am. Then he becomes more personal. He becomes personal, and he gives them a personal name. He says, but by my name, Yahuwah, was I not known to them. Now I'm becoming more personal to you. I'm not leaving anything that I always was, El Shaddai. I'm not leaving that, but now I'm becoming more personal because he handpicked them as a nation to be a witness to all other nations that's on the face of the earth. He says, you're going to be my witness. You're the people that's got to take me to the world, and you're the people that's going to mediate between me and the world. And it had to come through Yasharal. And he gave Yasharal his name. Now, other nations didn't know his name. Even when he went to Pharaoh, and what did Pharaoh say in the 5th chapter? He says, I don't know no Yah. Who is he? Who you come up here in the name of Yah? Who's that? I don't know no Yahweh. That's what he said in the 5th chapter of Exodus. He was introduced to him. And he understood who he was by the end of his life. When he drowned in the Red Sea, I know Yah now. I know who he is now. I didn't know him before, but I know who he is now. So Yasharal had to be a witness unto all the other nations who he was. So he gave them his name. So when you see Moshe writing about him in past tense, and you see Yod-He, Ud-He in Genesis, it's because that's who Moshe knew him as. Am I making sense to? That's why he was able to use Yod-He, Ud-He in Genesis as he's writing Genesis, because he introduced him to himself to Moshe as Yod-He, Ud-He. Even though Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob only knew him as El Shaddai or Elohim Shaddai. They only knew him as that. But Moshe knew him as Yahuwah. So he could use Yod-He, Ud-He. That's why you see Yod-He, Ud-He all the way up in Genesis in his writings, is because that's who Moshe knew him as. He knew him as his name. Even though Abraham didn't use Yod-He, Ud-He, because he didn't know him as Yod-He, Ud-He. Does that make sense? Is there any questions? Anybody got it? Are you following me on that or not? Does that make sense? No? Okay. Okay. All right. All right. So, are we getting tired yet? We're getting tired. So that's why when he says that this is my name, when you go to Isaiah chapter 42 and 8, he says, I am Yahuwah, Yod-He, Ud-He. That is my name. He makes it very clear, not only to the prophet Isaiah or Yashayahu, not only to Yashayahu or the prophet Isaiah, but emphatically he tells them throughout the nation of Yasharal who he was. When I understand that, now I know why other nations did not want to use his name, because he did not give his name to other nations. He didn't give it to other nations. So they could incorporate a device or an instrument in their translation because the name wasn't given to them. Yes.
So if there's power in the name, and the name is translated into Jesus, and when people call on the name of Jesus, they're not calling on his name. That's like, my name's Tamika. Don't call me Tammy. Because I'm not going to answer if I'm Tammy. So call me Tamika, and then you'll get a response. So what if he's just waiting for his people to call him by his name?
His people are the remnant. Now notice now, because we're not dealing with everybody, because even out of Yasharal, he says, I'm only taking a remnant. So when he gets his number and his remnant, and they do call him, he will answer. He will.
If people are confused and call on a name that's transliterated from his name,
Now
will he still answer?
he can, because, and the reason why I say that is in the 19th chapter of John when Pilate put his name up on the cross. And it was given in 3 different renditions. You had the Hebrew, his Hebrew name, which was pronounced, because you had people who spoke Hebrew. Peter spoke Hebrew. When he spoke Hebrew, so he said his name. Then you had those who were, they were Hebrew or they were Israelites, but they spoke the Greek language and came up under the Greek culture. So you had his name in Greek. And then you had those who spoke Latin. And so his name was in, because it says his name was written in Hebrew, Greek, and Latin.
But I think the scripture, when the scripture says, do not do as they do, when you find out what his real name is, according to his Hebrew name, I believe that he's called by his Hebrew name. I mean, that's just my philosophy.
You have some who are his people that will call him on his name. That's what they do. They'll call on his name. Mm-hmm. Now you have others who haven't been given the revelation, and so the name that they use, that's what they believe, and their faith is in him, and they get results. Because the results come through the faith. Remember the woman who was a dog, a Canaanite, who was a dog, and he said, your faith did it. Mm-hmm. It was your faith. And then even the woman that had an issue of blood, it's your faith. So where's your faith? Now you have some people whose faith in him, I mean, they know who they believe in. That's their faith. Now they might not have the revelation of the name, but their faith is what's making them whole. The faith will make you whole. That's why, I mean, you can't lose out on faith. I might not have a full understanding yet, but one thing I do have is faith. I got the faith. I don't have complete revelation, but I got faith. Yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I mean, even that Canaanite woman, she might have never got, she might have lived, died, and never was born into the kingdom or whatever. But the example is the faith that went from him to do that work because she believed in him. Some people believe in him or have that faith, not unto salvation. I got faith that I can be healed. I got faith that I can move mountains. I got faith that I can overcome everything in this world. I don't have faith for salvation. Yeah. And a lot of times we don't know what it means by salvation. Because you have a lot of people walking around saying, I'm saved, I know I'm saved. But what does saved mean? What do you mean? What do you mean saved? Now, if you're saying that your transgressions has been forgiven, that's one thing. All of my transgressions have been forgiven. He's forgiven me of my transgressions and of my sins. I have the forgiveness of sins. But that's not what soteria is. That's not what sozo is. When you look at it in the Greek text. The Greek text, when it uses the word sozo or soteria in the Greek text, it's not dealing with your sins. That's where our mistake is. And a lot of times we make those mistakes because we don't want to open up the book and read. We don't want to diligently research. If I want to hide something from you, I'm going to put it right in here. Because I know you ain't going to open up and read it. What's the name of that book? Ancient Near Eastern Thought and the Old Testament. Oh, okay. Yeah, nice book. Nice book. They just look at it. That's how most of us do. But actually digging into it and discovering and learning, now that's a whole different order. People have faith in him. They might not use his Hebraic name, but they have faith in him. And so what the instrument that they do use, they get the results, not so much of that instrument as it is the faith that's in them. So I can, now, some people, they get the revelation. Okay, let's go to Matthew 11 and 27. All things are delivered unto me of my Ab, and no man knoweth the Ben, but the Ab. Neither knoweth any man the Ab, save the Ben, and to whomsoever the Ben will reveal. Notice, he's talking to people in Judea at that time, and he's telling them, all y'all don't know my Father, and you don't know me. And the only way you're going to know me or the Father is if I reveal it to you. And if I don't reveal it to you, you're not going to know. And that's how it is. Unless he reveals it unto us, a lot of us is not going to know. And that's why he said in Habakkuk, I brought this out last week. I'll come back here. But it says in Habakkuk chapter 2, chapter 2, and I think it's verse number 2. And he says, and Yah answered him and said, write the vision, make it plain upon tables, that he may run that readeth it. So the vision, the revelation is there, but, you know, you got to read it and you got to have that pace. You got to have set a pace with them. When it says run, that doesn't mean a sprint. This is just the, you know, your patience with him and how you endure with him. Because in Hebrews, the 12th chapter, it says, being surrounded by a great cloud of witness, let us lay aside every weight and the sin that does so easily beset us, and run with patience. So he that runneth, you got to run with patience so it could be revealed. Okay, listen to verse 3. For the vision is yet for an appointed time, but at the end it shall speak and not lie. Though it tarry, wait for it, because it will surely come. What's coming? That vision. The vision is coming. At the end here, before he returns, there's going to be a lot of revelation, a lot of things opening up. That he's already doing it. We are already in the day of Yah. We're in that day of Yah now, because the day of Yah, the day of Yahuwah, where people talk about the day of the Lord, the day of Yahuwah is a period of time, and it's a dreadful time, and we're in that time frame now, where we have the day of Yah, and there's going to be more things that's going to be revealed. And then by the end, some people are going to say, why didn't I see that so long ago? It's just because you have to wait on it. You know, something, it will come. Because he says, it's going to come. He says, though it tarry, you wait for it. Because it will surely come. It will not tarry. So the vision, the revelation is coming. It is going to come, but you just have to wait on it. And some people see it, some people don't. You know, what's the condition of the heart? I mean, if my heart is set on, I don't believe none of that, that person's not going to see it. That's not going to see it. But the person that is saying, I don't have the revelation, reveal it unto me. I don't see it. Just reveal it unto me. Because anybody that walks with him and you have the spirit of truth, it guides you into all truth. And it says that it's going to testify of what it hears. So what it's hearing in the Shamaim and through the prophecy of this book, it's going to testify of that. And then he says, as he finishes St. John 16:13, he says, it's going to show you things to come. It's going to show you things to come. That's the spirit of truth. So you have to have a revelation, understanding of this book to see things that are coming. And if you don't see If you don't have the revelation of the book, you're not going to see things to come. It's just not going to happen. So he has to reveal it unto you. Like he says in Matthew 11:27, it's the Son or the Ben that does the revealing. He does the revelation. He's going to reveal it unto you. And he does that through the Spirit of truth. He guides you into all truth. He reveals unto you that revelation. So I want to give one last example. We're going to get into one last example here in John 8 and verse number, let's see, 40. St. John 8. I want to go to verse 31. St. John 8:31, because when it says in Revelations 12, we were in Revelations 12, and it talked about he came to the earth to deceive and to deceive all. His purpose and his intent is to deceive. And everybody everything about him is a deceiver. He's the master of deception. So what he speaks is deceptive. Satan, whenever he opens up his mouth and speak, it's to deceive. He might say something true, but the intent is to deceive. We have an example in the temptations of the Mashiach, when he took him up to the pinnacle and told him to jump, and he quoted Psalms 91. So is Psalms 91 true? Yes, it's true, but his intent was to deceive. It was a temptation. It was deceit. Everything about him is deceptive. You can't trust. He is a master of deception. The way we'll find out, those who come from him, everybody that comes from him is a liar, as we'll see in this discourse of scriptures here. Everything they do is a lie. They wake up in the morning, it's a lie. It's a lie. They wake up in the morning. They can go turn the coffee machine on, it's a lie. They can go brush their teeth, it's a lie. Everything about Satan is a lie. Everything. Everything about him is to deceive. Everything. Even if he tells the truth, the intent is to deceive. Because he'll say some true things, but his intent is to deceive. Everything about him. His morning breakfast toast is a lie. It's all a lie. Everything about him is a lie. If we can't understand that, then it's easy to be tripped up by him. Because his whole intent, there's nothing that he does. I don't care if it looks like regular. If what he's doing just looks, well, that's just natural. That's what life is. Everything about him is a lie. Okay, let's see this. Then said Jesus to those Jews which believed on him, if ye continue in my word, then are ye my disciples indeed, and ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. The only way you can be his disciple is to continue in the Torah. If you're not in Torah, and the Torah is what Moses wrote, it's what the prophets wrote, and it's what they wrote about the Son. That's Torah. And if you can't continue in Torah, you're not his disciples. You're not. Isaiah 8 and 16. What does he tell them to do? bind up the testimony, seal. This is the seal, one of the seals. Seal the law among my disciples. So his disciples were sealed. He handpicked them. He handpicked his disciples, and they were sealed, and they were sealed by the Torah. That's what sealed them. So if they came out of that seal, then they were not his disciples. That's why 1 John could say, if they were of us, no doubt they would have continued what? To be with us. But they came out from us because they were not of us. We had to show you, or they had to show that they were not of us. They weren't sealed. So you had some disciples that were sealed, and what sealed them was the law. So if you had anybody in the days of the disciples that was outside of Torah or was not teaching Torah or teaching the law, they were not sealed. I wonder if that's true today. It is a seal. It's a seal. Keeping his day holy, separated from all the other days, is a seal. It aligns you with him. It actually agrees with his two witnesses in his creation. Because he said, 6 days I work, that seventh day is set apart, it's sanctified. He says, I sanctified it. So we have witnesses in his creation. Did he ever stop that? No. No, he never stopped that sanctification of the seventh day. This day is sanctified unto him. And those who keep it are sealed. They actually have, those who keep it, they actually have a mark on them. And do you know who hates those who are sealed more than anybody else today? Satan? Yeah, but who is he? Those who, it is Satan, right. But those who are sealed by keeping the Sabbath, where is the confrontation coming from? That's the opposition. That ought to be telling you something. You're going to oppose, you're going to fight against the Sabbath, which is the only day he sanctified. That's Torah. He didn't sanctify no other days. Unless you can show me in this book where he sanctified one other day besides that seventh day. You have to show me in Torah. You have to show me in Torah. Even in the book of Revelation where it says the day of the Lord or the day of L-O-R-D, which is an instrument, but the day of Yah, when they're talking about the day of Yah, it's either the Sabbath day or the time period that we're going through right now is what he's talking about. He's not talking about the first day of the week. And anybody that stands up and says he's talking about the first day of the week, it has not been revealed unto them. The book has not been revealed unto them. Because he never claimed the first day of the week as his day. He never claimed that. Do you know where that came from? It came from the Collegium, the pontiffs. That's where it came from because they could write religious law at will. Now, understand a little bit about history. After our Messiah and all his disciples that he had sealed had passed off the scene, then the pontiff stood up and took over. And the pontiff said, just like Peter is the head of the church or the first pope, we write religious law, which is nothing new because they did it before. But what they did was they brought in Peter as the first pope. That was done by the pontiffs. That wasn't done by this book. That was done by the pontifex. Peter is the first pope. And then they called themselves the Vicar of Christ, which means they are Christ in this world. So anything that's in that order, you better be very careful. Very careful if you're in that order. Anyway, so it was given unto the disciples. Back to John 8 where we were, because I'm getting tired, unless somebody wants to take over. And ye shall know the truth. This is John 8:32. And ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. This whole discourse is so profound that the average reader will be left behind because they're not really understanding what he's saying here. He is our Messiah. He can speak on layers, multifacetedly, to bring out several points while he's talking about one thing. Listen to what he brings out. And they answered him, we be Abraham's seed, and were never in bondage to any man. How sayest thou, ye shall be made free? Number one, they're not descendants of Jacob. First thing off the bat. They're not the descendants of Jacob. Because Jacob knows bondage. Jeremiah, the 2nd chapter, yes.
They're also lying because, like you said, the whole area was under Roman control, so they are already in bondage anyway.
At that time, because even if they were of Abraham's seed through Ishmael or through Esau, which, because Jesus even told him, yeah, I know you're Abraham's seed, but I just had to bring out a point that you weren't of Jacob's seed. I mean, basically that's what he's saying. But even then, they were under the Roman rule, because the Romans ruled over Judea at this time. But they were puffed up in their pride. Judea at that time had Sephardic Jews, which were not of the descendants of Jacob, because they were placed in the land by the Assyrians. Sephardic Jews was placed in the land by, even to this day, you have some people say, well, we're of the Sephardic Jews. Well, that's fine, but you're not the descendants of Jacob. They had Canaanites that was in the land. They had Greeks left over because you had the fading out of Alexander. Alexander's kingdom was split 4 ways, and that was the third beast that Daniel saw, and that beast was fading out. And then you had the Roman Empire that was coming in, that was ruling, because Julius Caesar, the first Pontifex Maximus, was the Caesar that predated Christ. So you had the fading out of the Greeks, and here come the Romans. So you still had Greeks that were in the land, and you had Romans that were in the land, because you had Pontius Pilate. And I don't even think that was his real name. That was just the position that he held as the governor over Judea. He was a governor over Judea, and that was the name he had. So you had a mix of people. And so that's why on the cross you had Hebrew, Greek, and Latin, because those were the languages that were being spoken in the land at that time. And so you had all of that going on. So you had a mix of people that was in Judea at that time. And when you say Judea, of course, you had the descendants of Judah, you had the descendants of the tribe of Benjamin, and you had some Levites that were in the land. But Christ cleverly separates and surgically divides people. Okay? Verse 34, Jesus answered them, verily, verily, I say unto you, whosoever committeth sin is the servant of sin. And the servant abideth not in the house forever, the Son abideth ever. So he's taken it to an observation and a level that if you sin, you're the servant of that sin. Speaking to Judeans, or the seed of Jacob and the seed of Abraham. Anybody that commits sin is a servant to sin. You're a servant if you commit sin. That's why he said the soul that sinneth is going to die, because you're a servant to that sin, and you can't live. You're not going to be able to live. If the Son therefore shall make you free, ye shall be free indeed. So this is what people use as salvation, because they said, I'm no longer a servant to sin, so I must be saved. And they use this as an equivocation to being saved, which is not in the context of soteria or sozo that is being used in the Greek. You're just using it in a different context. Now, you can say, I'm no longer a servant to sin. Well, how are you no longer a servant to sin? It's because I'm abiding in the Son. The Son is not subject to sin. He is not subject to sin. So as long as I'm in the Son, I'm not a servant to sin. I don't have to sin. People who sin are outside of sonship. Remember, as many as are led by the Spirit or the Ruach are the Bens Elohim. So, but you got to be led by that Spirit. You got to be led by the Ruach. If the Son therefore shall make you free, ye shall be free indeed. Listen, I know that ye are Abraham's seed, but ye seek to kill me, because my word have no place in you. So you have those who were descendants of Abraham, not Jacob, but descendants of Abraham, that hated him. They didn't like him. They didn't like him. He goes on to put them in their place too. I speak that which I have seen with my Ab, and ye do that which ye have seen with your father. Uh-oh. He separates them. They answered and said unto him, Abraham is our father. Notice now, they go back to Abraham, which if you're Ishmaelites that were in the hand, you can go back to Abraham because Abraham is your father. If you were Esau, descendant of Esau, Abraham or Edom, that was your father. If you were a Midian, because Midian came from Keturah, and that was a son of, because Jethro was a Midianite, which was Moses' father-in-law, but he was a Midianite, which he was a descendant of, he was a seed of Abraham, but he did not come through Jacob, because the only ones who came through Jacob, of course, were the 12 tribes. Yes.
I think it caught me something. It talks about the Moabites and the Ammonites that weren't supposed to be in there.
Yes.
That's because they weren't of Abraham. They were from Lot.
Right. Right. That was Abraham's relative, but not the seed of Abraham. Lot's seed in his daughters was the Moabites and the Ammonites, and they were not descendants of Abraham at all. So they were forbidden. Yeah. Yeah. One maybe I'm not going to get to it today, but looking at that seed and the inheritance that was given to Abraham's seed. The inheritance that was given to Abraham's seed, that was a covenant that the Most High made with Abraham and his seed. Now, that covenant that he made with Abraham and his seed had nothing to do with the Shamaim or any skyboxes in the Shamaim. We'll deal with that later. We'll deal with that later. What is he talking about? What is he talking about? Because Shaul says, if you are of the Mashiach, then are you Abraham's seed and heir according to the promise, that covenant that was given to Abraham. He gave a covenant to Abraham that has nothing to do with skyboxes in the Shamaim. So where do we get that from? Again, you get your students or your subject of your teacher. Your subject of your teacher. And that's why he tells us in 1 John, you better hope it's the anointing that does the teaching. If it ain't the anointing that does the teaching, if you were Abraham's children, you would do the works of Abraham. But now ye seek to kill me, a man that hath told you the truth. And usually that's what happens with the messengers of truth. Anybody that brings truth, you're a target. They want to kill you. And even Jesus says, hey, they hated me before they hated you. And just like they came after me, they're going to come after you. Anybody that bears the truth is a target. Because I can speak some truth on the revelation of this book that'll make a lot of people mad. I just don't say it. I want to feed with knowledge and understanding. And who brings the revelation? The Spirit of truth is going to bring you that revelation. It's going to bring you that revelation. I got to feed with knowledge and understanding. The Ruach is going to give you that revelation. It'll reveal it to you. You know what our danger is? Our danger is, and we have to keep everything in perspective. He says, I give you shepherds according to my heart that are to feed you with knowledge and understanding. But we dishonor our shepherds because we make them demigods. That's dangerous. When he says, I give you shepherds to feed you with knowledge and understanding, you need somebody to feed you. Don't make them a God. I'm just as fallible as anybody out there. I can be deceived by the adversary and the devil. If I walk in my flesh, I'll be deceived. I don't care what my title is. You can call me anything. If I walk in my flesh, I can be deceived and vulnerable to sin like anybody else. Now, Shaul said that those who labor among us, you need to give them double honor. There is a certain and a proper way to do it, but even Shaul says, you follow me as what? As I follow Christ, the Mashiach. I'm following the Mashiach. That's why you follow me. If I'm not following the Mashiach, don't follow me. That's pretty much what Shaul said. If I ain't following the Mashiach, don't follow me. And we give men and women so much. We make them our Christ. And if any person has made a man or a woman their Christ, then you're going to end up in HE double hockey sticks. Because you made somebody your Christ. And that's a slap in his face. When you make somebody, you have one Christ, you have one Mashiach. He paid the price for you. You belong to him. You don't belong to no pastor. I'm going to make a lot of folks mad. I don't care. Because if you ain't hooked up with Christ, the Mashiach, you ain't going to make it. You ain't going to make it. I've given you somebody to feed you with knowledge and understanding. I didn't give them to you so that you could make them a little God. And we got some people that can't move unless they'll tell them, okay, you can go to the store. Okay, you can go here. Okay, you can do this. Okay, I ain't like that. I'm sorry, I ain't like that. You better get hooked up with the Mashiach. You better get hooked up with Christ. I'm to feed you with knowledge and understanding. Your relationship is with Christ. He says, but you seek to kill me, a man that have told you the truth, which I have heard of Elohim. This did not Abraham. Okay, verse 41, ye do the deeds of your father. Then said they to him, we be not born of fornication, we have one Elohim. So now they're trying to get righteous. They trying to get righteous. Y'all know church folk. You put the heat on them and y'all gonna go to hell. Wait a minute. No. I know I was born right. I wasn't born out of fornication. Jesus said unto them, if Elohim were your Ab, ye would love me. For I proceeded forth and came from Elohim. Neither came I of myself, but he sent me. Why do ye not understand my speech? Why couldn't they understand his speech? Because we can't hear you. And that's where a lot of people are. They can't hear what the Spirit. How many times did Jesus say, he that hath an ear, let him hear what the Spirit is saying? Because you have to hear the Spirit. You have to hear that Spirit of truth. And it's that Spirit of truth that'll bring that revelation. Got to go?
No.
Oh. I know I'm getting long-winded. So he says, ye are of your father, the devil, and the lust of your father ye will do. He was a murderer from the beginning and abode not in the truth because there is no truth in him. That's why everything he does is a lie. Morning breakfast toast is a lie. Everything he touches is a lie. Everything he speaks is a lie. He says right here, there is no truth in him. So everything he does is a lie. Everything. And if you're walking in the flesh, that's why the people couldn't hear his word. If you're walking in the flesh, you are subject to him. And that's why when Peter said, be this far from me, he was in his flesh. Satan took over. And everything he does is a lie. The shoes he put on is a lie. The house he lives in is a lie. The car he drives is a lie. Everything about him is a lie. That's what Jesus said. Say no truth in him. If there's no truth in him, that means everything he does is a lie. Everything he does is a lie. All the men that dress up like women is a lie.
Yes, Lord. Hallelujah.
Tyler Perry is a lie. What's that woman? Medea is a lie. And you'd be surprised how much church folk bring Medea up in church, and it's a lie. Every time that wig he put on is a lie. Them rubber breasts is a lie. Them big old hips and backside is a lie. Every time he put nylons on, it's a lie. His lipstick's a lie. Everything he does. And he's got so much power. He got so much power. Everything the devil does ain't nothing but a lie. And he's got so much. It's a shame. He's got. Sometimes when I was, and I read Revelations 12. I read it a lot. But no wonder the heavens rejoice. He's gone. When he gets off this earth's gonna rejoice. Man, he's finally gone. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. The devil's gone. That's why the heavens rejoicing. They saying, y'all got him now. Y'all got him now. He said, y'all ought to be in mourning. Isn't that what he said in Revelation 12? He said, woe unto you, all you inhabitants. Who is this? Tyler Perry. I make church folks mad because church folks was up in Medea. Yeah. Yeah. A lot of church folks, that's why they mad at me. Y'all can get mad at me all you want. Yes. It's all a lie. It's all a lie. There's no truth in it. And do you know he laid hands, that old Medea laid hands on T.D. Jakes and was praying over him, speaking in tongues. That ain't nothing but a lie. Ain't nothing but a lie. That ain't nothing but a lie. Because there ain't no truth. Everything he touches, everything he does, nothing but a lie. And he loves your flesh. He loves your flesh. And as long as we're in the flesh, Romans 8 and verse 7. Because the carnal mind is enmity against Elohim, for it is not subject to the law of Elohim, neither indeed can be. So then they that are in the flesh cannot please Elohim, because there ain't no, that's why Shaul said, there ain't no good thing in my flesh. Man, there ain't no good thing in my flesh. Nothing good in it. And it says in 1 John, he says, love not the world, because all that's in it is the lust of the eye, lust of the flesh, and the pride of life. That's all that's in it. That's all that's in it. So he says, don't love it. Don't love it. You better watch out. And some of that programming that he, and I mean, I didn't know he laid hands on T.D. Jakes. And I'm not, it ain't no defamation of nothing, because that's what happened. It's on TV. It's out there, social media. He laid his hands on T.D. Jakes, speaking in tongues. Tyler Perry, speaking in tongues. Ain't nothing. Everything that the devil does is a lie. Does he have a familiar spirit? You better believe it. You better believe it. And he warned us about them familiar spirits. Because anything that is carnal or in the flesh cannot be subject. That's why we have to know, what is his law? What is his law for me? I have to know the law, because if I don't know the law, I'll easily succumb to carnality and the flesh. I don't know the law. I got to know the law of the Most High. What does his law say? Because what does it say in verse 4? Romans 8 and 4. The righteousness of the law might be fulfilled in us. So let me say this. Let me drop some more hammers and make more people mad at me. There's a Christ that believes in the law of Elohim, and there's a Christ that doesn't believe in the law of Elohim. It's plain as day. You have a Christ that follows, that, I shouldn't say follow, you have a Christ that is the law of Elohim. Because he says, I come in the volume of the book, it's written of me. The whole volume of the book, That's who I am. That's my testimony. So you have a Christ who is the law of Elohim, and then you have a Christ that doesn't believe in the law of Elohim. So which one do you think has eternal life? Which Christ is going to give you eternal life? The Christ that is the law of Elohim, or the Christ that doesn't believe in the law of Elohim? The one that is. That is. Did I finish up in John? I think I'm done in John 8. I wanted to bring that out because everything about him is a lie. He, in verse number 44, St. John 8:44, but when he speaketh a lie, he speaketh of his own, for he is a liar and the father of it. And because I tell you the truth, you don't believe me. There's some things that we've heard all our life, so that if we hear something different, we think that it's foreign and it can't be true. You could be told a lie all your life, and then when you hear the truth, you don't accept it because it don't sound like what I've been told. I've been told all my life this, and then all of a sudden, but everything I say, I read out of the book. I could understand you if I open up this book and read. I can understand you. But when I open up this book and read, yeah. I said at the beginning of this that it's important to understand the culture in which the book was given, the people and the culture in which it was given, because that's the explanation of it. As I'm reading this book here, every nation had their gods. Every nation. The Romans had their gods. The Greeks had their gods, along with the Assyrians, along with the Medes, Persians, and along with the Babylonians, along with the Canaanites and the Egyptians. I mean, you just keep going back. It goes back to Nimrod. It goes back to Nimrod. In fact, even before because Nimrod came after the flood, but even before that. So every nation had their gods. Romans was not different than anybody else. They had their gods. So you have to hear the context through the language and the linguistics of the nation whom it was given to. That's how I have to hear it. Because if I'm not hearing it through that culture and that language, then I'm listening through it. I'm listening through another culture and another language, and all nations had their gods. All nations had their gods. Even you look at Greek mythology, and it was the Romans that came up with the man god. Watch out now. Watch out. Because they looked to Caesar, and that's why I went from one man, because Caesar was a man god. And that position that a man held was a man god in that position. That's where you get that term, man god. It's a Latin, it comes from the Romans. So we have to see our Messiah, the body, there was a body made for him. You did see that body? Okay, all right. Let me finish, though.
I went to got here to give me to keep me.
Okay, all right.
Because I don't want to get out of there. I wanted her to do a word with me.
Right.
And we had the other person, and who was that?
That's okay. That's okay. Let me finish this, though. Let me finish this thought, okay? Let me finish. He said a body was prepared for him. He says a body was prepared for me. So that body that was prepared for him was human flesh that had a beginning and an end. Okay, all right. So that
I didn't want to go in that thing. I just want to say, because we're, being, most of us are married.
right. It's okay. Just it's good. Don't worry about it, Deacon. It's good. Um, um, so he said a body was prepared for him that the spirit might go in that body. So the spirit that was in him was from the beginning, but that human flesh that came through Mary was a body like you and I that lived and died. Because when you see him come back, he had a different body to the point where Mary didn't even recognize. Now you can't tell me Mary didn't recognize him? You got your hand up? You mean Mary couldn't recognize him? Now Mary was somebody that used her tears to wash his feet and her hair to dry his feet, to be that intimate with him, and she could not recognize him? Because after his resurrection, when that human body went to the grave, he had a different body. He still had the holes in his hand and the hole in his side, but even the men on Emmaus, on the road to Emmaus, didn't recognize him. So that human flesh that he had a beginning and had to die. And that human flesh that he had was the son, or the Ben Elohim. The spirit that was in him, that, of course, that human body comes with the human spirit, but the spirit that was in him was the Most High Elohim in that body. So we have to be careful when we say God the man or the man God. Be careful when you make those assertions, because that certainly sounds like the Roman Empire. And the Roman Empire has a lot of influence on the translation of this book. A lot of influence.
The person this morning took care of it, gave me
Okay. Okay. All right. So is there any questions out there? Anybody got anything they want to add? I'm gonna bring this to an end. But what I wanted to say was how that deceiver, who's here to deceive the whole world, and the power that he wields, and our only hope, our only salvation is if we have the Spirit of Christ, if we're following that Spirit. For as many as are led by the Ruach, they are the sons. As many as led by the Spirit, they are the sons. And we even see that in John, the first chapter, where he says he came unto his own, and his own received him not. But as many as received him, he gave them power to what? Become the sons of God, sons of Elohim, Ben Elohim. That's because they're led by the Spirit. They're led by the Ruach. So your power of being the son is because you're led by the Ruach. That's the power that he's given us to be sons. And then if we're sons, then we stand to inherit.
I didn't want to do this anymore, so I just went to someone.
Okay. All right. So that completes our class on today. And I welcome everybody that's here, that's come into the house, the virtual house, and anybody out there, if you subscribe to our YouTube channel, Christ Apostolic Church of Iowa on the YouTube channel, the more subscribers that we get, it don't cost you anything to subscribe. The more subscribers we get, then we get into the algorithm, and then more people will be able to pick it up, especially if you refer it to your friends. And that is a tool to witness. It's a witnessing tool. Some people say, well, I want to go out and witness. I want to go out. Well, you can witness by asking people to subscribe to because there's people who listen to our channel, and even on Facebook, there are people who listen that comment and ask questions and even come into, we had somebody who wants to come and do more studying that has picked up the the broadcast through our YouTube channel. And so that's one way to witness. So ask you to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Christ Apostolic Church of Iowa. And with that, I say Shabbat Shalom. Shalom, kings and queens, kings and priests. He says we're going to